What's up, guys, and welcome back to the Rails of Mass. If you're just joining us, we've been following the former Bay Colony Railroad Newton line. Today we'll be picking up right where we left off back at the Charles River. If you've been following along with this series, you know this is not the first time we've crossed the Charles River, and it won't be the last. As you can see, the rails here are now gone. They were removed back in fall of 2015 to make room for the Upper Falls Greenway, which opened in September of 2016. The rail corridor here is still owned by the MBTA and is leased to the Upper Falls Greenway. The corridor is leased to these towns and cities, under the agreement that it can be terminated at any time if the need for rail ever comes back. In the previous episode, we left from CP Land, Needham Heights, which is milepost 13.8, that's measured from Boston, but now we're back on the Bay Colony timetable. Unlike the MBTA timetable, the mile markers are now going down, counting down to Cook Street at milepost 0.0, and that's where we'll be ending today's episode. Also now on screen, we can see the timetable from the Needham line. I didn't have this at the time of our last episode. Former conductor David Hutchinson was nice enough to reach out to me and give me a bunch of material, including these timetables. Big thanks to him. With the exception of the tracks being gone, things look pretty much identical to the way they did when the last train passed through here, but that's soon going to change. In the distance on the other side of Oak Street, where Bay Colony's last customer was here, is going to be a huge new redevelopment, with over 800 housing units, as well as retail and other things. I think this major change coming to the area is the reason we should start talking about bringing service back here. Before this development was started, this idea was discussed back around 20 years ago, connecting Newton Highlands to Needham Heights. With this major new redevelopment coming to the Newton Upper Falls area, I believe it may be time to begin evaluating our future transportation needs. We're now on our final approach to Oak Street. Oak Street is special to me because it's where I grew up as a kid. It's also where I had my first memories of trains. Growing up right down the street and my father working in the large building coming up on the left, I saw a lot of trains here growing up. I never imagined I'd be returning here all these years later, looking back at the way it was. Although unfortunately there's nothing left now, this area was once thriving with rail traffic. From 1856 to 1863, this line was very important for transport of gravel trains. This brought fill material from Needham to what is now Back Bay. This line was originally built around 1852 by industrialist Otis Peattie as part of the Charles River Branch Railroad. The original hope was to have the Boston and Albany Railroad come here, but after realizing that wouldn't happen, Otis Peattie decided to build his own railroad. As we arrive at Oak Street, directly across the street you can see the depot still standing here. The depot was a key stop on this line. It was opened around 1852. Now home to Little Luke's Cafe, the structure is still standing proud in 2026. Especially around the era of the Back Bay gravel trains, there was a lot of freight service on this line, but passenger service was always pretty inconsistent. Rewinding to March of 1972, Bruce Nelson took this wonderful photo here. At the time the depot was still being used by Penn Central as an office. The depot's still in great shape today. And because we came on a day they were open, we get to take a look inside. Now rewinding to 2001, we see this David Lee photo of Bay Colony 1701 arriving here in Newton Upper Falls. Although it could use a coat of paint today, the structure still looks great from being from the 1850s. Although the line was once double tracked across Oak Street, that second track was later cut back to the end of the depot here. That second track was in use here as a siding for many years. It fell into disrepair in the early 2000s, and by the end of Bay Colony's time here, it was unusable. Another look at the open railway map gives us a better idea of what the track layout once looked like here. The area behind the blue fence on the right is currently under redevelopment, and it was the home of where Bay Colony's last customer was here. During the last years of operation here, Bay Colony was coming to Newton about once every 2 weeks. And at the very end, it was even less than that. On the right, you'll see the angle of the fence change slightly there. That was where one of 3 tracks came into the customer property. The warehouse building had 2 tracks that went inside, and one outside in the middle, closer to the far track. Now turning around and looking the other direction, we can see one of the gates is still here, which was once for the rail service here. There's even a small piece of rail left in there. Now, as always, the best way to really see how it was is to actually look back in time. Here we see Bay Colony's 1061 working the same spot many years ago. This side of the plant had 2 tracks, one going into the building and one stopping just short. The one stopping just short was buried by this mound of dirt many years ago, and what's left of it's still under there, I believe. Now switching to the air, we can get a better look at where the plant used to be. This was also the home of the Marshall Shopping Plaza. Marshall's has temporarily moved across the street and the home of another former Bay Colony customer, but we'll cover that in the next episode. It's very hard to envision what was once here, so we're going to take another look back in time. Here we see Bay Colony's 1061, just beyond that mound of dirt we just discussed earlier. We also see newly acquired CF7 2443 on the other track. It is likely just dropped off some cars inside the building, and is now heading back to the main line. Taking one last modern look from the air, we have the Upper Falls Depot in the top right corner, with Oak Street in the background. Now that we've had a quick look around, we're going to continue on our way. We only have a short amount of distance to cover before we reach Cook Junction. Coming up ahead in the distance, you'll notice that sign, as well as the path splitting off to the right. This marks the lead of the former Cabot Industrial Spur, and we'll be checking that out beginning in the next episode. Splitting off from here, the Cabot Industrial Spur went across Needham Street, and served customers including all the way to the Needham Industrial Park. Now with another look back in time, we see 1061 coming off of the Cabot Industrial Spur, after just having crossed Needham Street. In the final configuration, there was a siding here. It ran from about the fence line at the plant behind us, going up until the apartments that we're going to reach ahead. One more look back in time and we can see that track layout. This siding remained in use up until the end of Bay Colony operations here. Now with our look back in time complete, we're going to continue on our way. On our right, we can see some of the busy retail area of Needham Street. This area has changed a lot over the recent decades, and will soon be pretty much unrecognizable from what it once was. We're now approaching the location of where that switch was for the other side of the siding. Just a matter of feet beyond the switch, Bay Colony 1061 was parked out of service for many years. 1061 ended up spending its final years here, up until the very end when it was towed up to Ivex where it was scrapped. Worth noting is that bench right there. Just like Medfield, Newton has chosen to put benches along his trail. I really hope Needham will follow along soon. As you can see here, in addition to the 800 new apartment units that are on the way, more apartments have already been built here. I think this is more justification to either extend the Green Line to Needham Heights, or extend the Needham Line to Newton Highlands. I would personally rather see the commuter rail extended, but that's probably another subject for another video. Even if it wasn't brought to Newton Highlands, I think even extending the commuter rail just to the depot at Newton Upper Falls would be a great move. The population here has become a lot more dense over the recent decades and is only growing. I also think the one-stop extension would be very good for the Needham line, being the second shortest line on the commuter rail system. In the distance, we now see National Lumber. In a previous episode, I talked about the idea if Bay Colony held onto this line long enough for it to be passed to Mass Coastal. One can only imagine the way things could have been. Could you imagine National Lumber as a freight customer for Mass Coastal? We're now approaching the end of the Upper Falls Greenway. The trail ends here at National Lumber, and we're now arriving at Cook Junction. It's hard to tell from our perspective down here at ground level, but if we come back up to the air, we're going to see we're only a matter of feet back from the active tracks. Here we have the Upper Falls Greenway on the left. You can see National Lumber in the middle, and right behind that is the active D branch of the Green Line. We're in between Newton Highlands and Elliott stations. This section of the Green Line going forward towards Boston follows the original right-of-way of the Charles River Branch Railroad. It's interesting to see how some sections survived, like here in Newton, as well as Needham, but others didn't make it. This is also going to mark the end point of where we're going to be following this railroad, in this direction at least. We're now looking the other way. The tracks splitting off to the right go towards Elliott Station, and the Upper Falls Greenway is right in front of us, looking back towards Needham. Well, that's it for this episode. Be sure to join us back here next time as we take a deeper look at the Cabot Industrial Spur. Thank you for joining me on today's adventure. If you haven't done so already, be sure to like the video, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you don't miss our next adventure. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.